Surah 7, verse 157 is the very clear Quran verse that shows that the Islamic dilemma is not in the Quran but in the traditions. It also shows very clearly that the messenger mentioned in the Quran was not Muhammad but Jesus. We have discussed this verse many times before, but today we will just go through some bits and pieces as opposed to a full detailed breakdown. So let's just get it done. When we have a look at this verse translated literally word for word using ChatGPT, he will give us this. Those who follow the messenger, the prophet, the Ummi, whom they find written with them in the Torah and the Gospel, he commands them with the recognized thing, and he forbids them from the unrecognized. And he makes lawful for them the good things, and he makes forbidden upon them the foul things. And he removes from them their sins, and the shackles which were upon them. So, those who believed, past tense, in him, and supported him, and helped him, and followed the light which was sent down with him. Those are the successful ones. We've seen this same example in Surah 355, where Allah makes those who follow Jesus superior to those who disbelieve until the day of judgment. Therefore, this messenger must also be Jesus when we compare it with Surah 3 verse 55. When we have a look at the translation from Murad, we also see that he translates these verses in the past tense. Let's see how the translators will render this particular verse. Ahmad Ali, he doesn't say the unlettered prophet, but he translates it in a similar manner as Rashad Khalifa by writing who follow the messenger, the Gentile prophet, described in the Torah and the Gospel, and so on. Once we actually get to the end, we see that he writes, those who believe and honor and help him, and follow the light sent with him. He uses present tense, however, the Arabic is in past tense. He's talking about those people who followed the messenger who was Jesus. Al-Karai describes this word, ummi, which, as I mentioned in many videos before, is very much questioned. We see once again that he says something unusual. Instead of saying the unlettered prophet, he will tell us that it is the untaught prophet. We will see similar descriptions later. Once again, once we get to the command at the very end, even though the Arabic is in the past tense, Al-Karai says that it is in the present tense. All of a sudden, he's talking about those who believe in him and honor him and help him and follow the light which was sent down with him. Except that that's not what the Arabic says. Everything is in the past tense in the Arabic because it is talking about those who followed Jesus in the past. Amjad Khan goes one little step further by saying that those who will obey this noble messenger, that's not in the Arabic, and then he makes it clear that we understand that the noble messenger who is actually being discussed is not Jesus, when he says that it is Prophet Muhammad. You would have thought that the very clear book would not need you to shoehorn the name of your prophet if it was so clear. He must have realized that the rest of the verse is very clearly describing Jesus and not Muhammad. So, the herald of the hidden who is untutored. So far we have three translations, one of them Gentile, one untaught, and the next one untutored, with the qualification of, well, except by Allah. Trust me, bro. Do you begin to see that when I have said many times that the word ummi is problematic, it is in fact very problematic? In fact, notice how Murad translates it. Those who follow the messenger, the national prophet. Why would he translate it as such? Because the word is ummi. And when you look at translations and dictionaries, nobody knows the true meaning of the word. But ummi is from the same root as umma, which we know is national. So it looks like Murad is very close to the correct meaning, and that the meaning of unlettered or something of the sort was simply shoehorned later to make the book more divine, because an unlettered prophet could not have done it, which is correct. But we continue still with Amjad Khan. We see once again that once he's giving the instruction of what people need to do, or rather, when he is describing the successful, he changes the tense and tells us that it's all in the present tense. So those who believe in him and revere him and help him and follow the light which came down. And you see how all of these things are not in the Arabic, they are in the past tense. They are talking about past events and also a past prophet, but they try their best to make it sound like it was about Muhammad speaking to a crowd, and it has to be followed to this day, despite of this verse not describing Muhammad in the slightest. When we continue with Arbery, we have once again a different translation for the word ummi, those who follow the messenger, the prophet of the common folk. I thought that the word ummi was very clear and everyone understood it, but it looks like every single translator is trying to make a different interpretation for it that fits Muhammad, as opposed to looking at the actual meaning of the word. When we look at the description of who are the successful, once again we have present tense, present tense, present tense, despite of the Arabic being in the past tense. When we look at Corpus Quran, for the first time, we see the use of the word unlettered, as it is now pretty much mainstream and every Muslim will know or think that it says unlettered, even though we have already seen it was not clear at all. Once again, when we get to the description of who are the successful, the verse is speaking in the present tense, according to Corpus, but the Arabic is in the past tense. Daryabadi does exactly the same as Corpus, describing the prophet as the unlettered prophet, and the description of who are the successful, he will do it in the present tense, despite of the Arabic being past tense. Now, Hilali Khan. Notice how incredibly long his translation is. He inserts not only a translation, but explanation, tafsir, and a lot more. As you can see at a glance, how he is inserting Muhammad and how he's inserting Quran, even though those things are most definitely not in the Arabic. So he writes for us, those who follow the messenger, the prophet who can neither read nor write, and then in brackets, i.e. Muhammad. And then he continues saying things such as, whom they find written with them in the Torah, and it gives the reference, and also the Injil, which is quite rich, considering that in current Islam, they say that the previous scriptures are corrupt, but they seem to still take any verses that they like out of context if it suits their false narrative. Needless to say, those references have absolutely nothing to do with Muhammad, just like this verse has absolutely nothing to do with Muhammad. In fact, the likely answer is that this verse, which is very clearly describing Jesus, when it says they find him in the Torah and the Injil, it doesn't mean that he was prophesied in the Torah and the Injil, but that he was in there, he was doing things. In the case of the Torah, it would have been the angel of the Lord during creation and appearing to Abraham and appearing to Moses and so on. So they would have found this messenger of God in reality in the world doing things with people, including having a conversation with Moses and having a nice kebab with Abraham. And the gospel, well, needless to say, he would be there not only in the Gospel, but in the full Bible, all the way up to Revelation. When we get to the end of the verse, once again, we see that they ignore the tenses completely, because getting the tenses right is something that happens to other people. He translates everything in the present so that the readers believe that this is talking about you need to obey Muhammad, even though the verse has nothing to do with Muhammad. To deceive the readers just a little bit more, he inserts that belief in him means belief in Muhammad, despite of all of this verse describing Jesus to a T. And then follow the light, which is very clearly a call to the Spirit. Follow the Holy Spirit. He helps us by writing that that is the Quran. Even though if you think about this verse in the standard Islamic narrative, it would not have even been written. So it would have looked a little bit like Muhammad saying to the Jews, believe in the messenger and the light which was sent down with him. And people will ask him, can we see that light? And he will have to say, no, it's a verse in my head. I can recite it for you and you must trust me. Otherwise, remember Haibar. See the problem? Surah 3 verse 55 explains that those who follow Jesus will be superior to those who disbelieve until the day of judgment. And now we have a verse that is talking in the past tense, and those who followed that will be the successful. Of course, it is about Jesus. It is even more clear when we see that he's described as being in the Torah and the Injil, of course, Jesus, forbidding what is right and forbidding what is haram and making lawful what is halal, which is found as well in Surah 3 verse 50, also about Jesus, removing shackles, which is Jesus, and so on and so forth. Then we get to Maududi, who doesn't even make an effort at trying to interpret the meaning of the word Ummi. So he simply writes in English, those who follow the Ummi prophet. This is my preferred translation because everybody disagrees with the meaning of the word. So very often in other shows, you would have heard me say exactly this, those who follow the Ummi prophet. Why? Because there is a huge question mark over the word Ummi. Nobody knows the meaning, but probably Murad got it right. When we get to the end, seeing Maududi, once again, the magical Arabic has changed a very nice past tense sentence into present tense because reasons. Then we continue with Muhammad Sarwar, who, the unlettered prophet, he translates it as the illiterate prophet. And then he qualifies it a little bit more. Not conventionally educated. Thank you, Mr. Sarwar. You are amazing. Then, after saying that he is in the Torah and the Gospel, he, in brackets, the messengers, enjoys them to do good and forbids them bad. So he, according to Mr. Sarwar, means the messengers. This should surprise no one, because the Quran is not really sure if Allah is singular or plural, as we have seen before many times. Again, this should surprise no one. He makes the final sentence all in the present tense. Muhammad Shakir follows in the footsteps of the previous translator, where he does not translate Ummi at all and says those who follow the apostle prophet. Compounded title there, the Ummi. And then he continues. By the time that we get to the end, the magical Arabic tells us that past tense is in fact present tense, just like that means this. Big Tho then translates this as those who follow the messenger, the prophet who can neither read nor write. He gets this explanation by not understanding what Ummi means. And then at the very end, we get once again a past sentence turned into present tense. And We continue. Karibullah, he now goes with the unlettered prophet. Well done. And he makes it clear for us that it is Muhammad. For the final sentence is pretty much turned from past tense into present tense. Sahih International gives us the version that every Muslim will parrot nowadays, which is the unlettered prophet, hence why the whole miraculous book. And interestingly enough, he uses past tense in these verses, which is quite curious. The job of Sahih International is to deceive readers and not to make things clear. It looks like to me that people have realized that the translators have generally got this one very, 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 very wrong, and Sahih International was too embarrassed to continue that trend. What we get is a decent translation of what the Arabic says. He uses present perfect, which is still a perfectly legit translation from the Arabic. So they who have believed in him, honored him, supported him, and followed the light which was sent down with him. It's odd that Sahih International decided to be honest with this translation when we have seen so many other translations of Sahih International where he lied through his teeth, which makes me think there is probably another reason behind it, perhaps because this was already so accepted by the Muslim community that he could give the correct rendering and nobody would complain. It is unusual anyway. Talalitani, he translates Ummi Prophet as the unlettered prophet as well, and then he reverts back to using a sentence that is very clearly in past tense becomes present tense. And finally, we have Wahihuddin Khan, who again gives us the unlettered prophet, just like Yusuf Ali, and the final sentence being turned from past tense to present tense, as we have seen in every single case except with Sahih International. And just to close off, we have Rashad Khalifa, the man who is not accepted in Islamic circles, but he sometimes lets things slip. So he's quite a good source for this research. Rashad Khalifa translates this as follow the messenger, the Gentile prophet. And thank you for making it clear that it is Muhammad, because otherwise people would have thought this was all about Jesus. And then at the end, those who believe in him, respect him, support him, and follow the light that came with him. And his explanations as to what that means are quite interesting, but that's not the topic for today. He let the team down by trying to deceive us and translating very clear past tense sentences into present tense, just like the others. And just as a quick summary, this is what the verse is actually then saying. Those who follow the messenger, the Ummi prophet, who nobody knows what the word means, but probably Murad is right or directionally correct when he translates it as national, who is found in the Torah and the Injil, that of course it would be Jesus, who enjoys upon them what is right and forbids them what is wrong, makes lawful for them the good things and prohibits for them the evil. Only Allah can do that in Islam, yet in the Quran we have this verse clearly saying that the messenger makes things lawful and unlawful, and in Surah 3 verse 50 we have Jesus doing that same thing, where he says, I have come confirming what was before me of the Torah, and to make lawful for you some of what was forbidden to you. The Quran in two different places says that someone is making things lawful and unlawful other than Allah, and in both cases is Jesus. One very clearly, Surah 350 is Jesus speaking, Surah 757 also Jesus, but has been exegeted for too long wrongly. Then, as we continue, and relieves them of their burden and the shackles which were upon them, we can see this theme in the Bible, where in Matthew 11 we read, Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This verse could not be describing Jesus any better, except if they had written Jesus instead of messenger. And then as we end with people having to believe in him in the past tense and honored him and supported him and followed in the past tense the light, which is a clear call to the Spirit. So as we can see, when we do tick boxes of how many of these statements match Jesus, he's in the Torah and the Gospel, he makes things lawful and unlawful and prohibits evil, he relieves people of their burdens, everything is in the past tense, so it would make more sense than Muhammad is speaking about these things, because past tense, and also the light, which is the Spirit, and sent down with him, meaning he's up above, the Word and the Spirit being sent down. When it comes to Muhammad, this verse is not describing him at all, and we have to do a lot of twisting and a lot of fabrications in order for this to begin to describe Muhammad, and it still doesn't work. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope that you have enjoyed this very brief breakdown on Surah 757. If you want a more detailed explanation of this verse, make sure that you catch the live streams and videos where we explore this from different angles and so on. Stay tuned for the next episodes. Until then, stay well. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
There is only one Quran, right? Every Quran in the world is the same. That's what you've been told. You have been told a lie!
26 of the Quran.
26 different Qurans!
There are 0 Dawa guys apparently left on the planet who are willing to defend Muhammad in a debate.
Everybody can go and read it. This is a book full of mistakes in Arabic, in the grammar, in the spelling, in the pronunciation.
Whoever wrote the Quran made an error because they didn't quite understand what was written in the 7th century in the Torah and the Injil.
Stay away from these translations. They are propaganda.
We know that stories about Muhammad were made up on an industrial scale.
What in the world is this Injil?